You look great, ladies. Man, oh man, that's my favorite thing to do. I was in England. Oh, it is. Can we have like a tiny bit of house lights? I cannot. There we go. Okay. I'd like to see your beautiful faces. That you don't know are beautiful. Haha, but they are. It's nice to be here. I wasn't supposed to be here. Some of you might have signed up for this conference thinking you were getting my tall, blonde friend, Jackie. And that is not me. Jackie had a 10-pound baby naturally 2 weeks ago, so she's on an ice pack. But my good friend Jackie Francois is back in Dallas, and I wanted to maybe send her a little video of all of us saying hi. Could we do that? While she's nursing her 10-pound baby, Ben, that we're all affectionately calling Big Ben, because man, is he a chunk. Again, all natural 10-pound, very round-headed baby. So you get me, because that hasn't happened in my life, ever. My kids were like 6 pounds, 7 ounces, and I had an epidural, walked in backwards, it was great. So, it's a very specific joke. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pan across, and we're gonna go, hi, Jackie. Can we do that? Yeah, and then wave, like make a huge scream, okay? Yes, can we do that? All right. 1, 2, 3. We miss you, friend. We love you. I will send that to her. You should shoot her a DM on Instagram, too. She's great. Jackie and I have been friends for years. One of my favorite, Steubenville Conference memories, I was 6.5 months pregnant. She was 3.5 months pregnant. We were at a conference in Wisconsin, and they had the speaking team in dormitories, and we shared a bunk bed and a dorm bathroom, sick as dogs, because we were growing human children in our bodies. Father Leo Petalingha got us a hotel room for the second night of the conference because he was so worried about us on these dorm beds. This is a much nicer conference to get to come hang out at. This is actually the youth conference that changed my life. I'll tell you that story a little bit later tonight. I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana, about 90 minutes away, SWLA. My grandparents lived in Alexandria my whole life. My grandfather moved to Lake Charles back in October. So my 86-year-old grandpa now lives around the corner from me, which is great and also very hard because I have to go fix his phone a lot. But I'd rather him be right there than have to drive to Pineville. I don't know who wants to drive to Pineville, but it's not me, even though I love coming up here. If there's any Pineville folks in the room, I grew up going to the library there. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, we'll finally just jump into what we're supposed to be talking about, which is femininity, right? I wore my fancy dress. I had my hair down, but then humidity, so I had to pull it back so I didn't look like a lion about to attack you from the stage. It's funny, you come to a conference, a Steubenville conference, and there's beats, right? We know what's going to happen. We're going to have a bishop rap and then yell at us in the homily about #facts, right? We're going to see Jesus. That's really great. You're going to buy a book that you might never read. You'll have somebody sign your t-shirt and you'll get some Saint socks that you'll think that's really, really cool. And then come school year, you'll go put them on and you'll think, no, nobody needs to see Saint Dymphna on my ankles. And so you'll shove them into the bottom of a shelf. And the standard of Steubenville Youth Conferences across America since they began, including the one I came to in the summer of 2006, is a women's session. Let's put all the ladies in the room and see what estrogen level we can reach. Right? Let's get all the girls in the room and tell them they're pretty, pretty princesses and Jesus loves you so much. But see, I think women's sessions need to go a little bit deeper than just, hey, you're great. Because you are great. But what does that mean in our world today? Do you actually understand the feminine genius that you uniquely possess? Do you understand the feminine strength that you uniquely wield? Do you recognize your value and your worth in this world so desperate for true femininity, which is not a cookie cutter, dress this way, do this, act like that, bow your head and say, yes, sir. That's not true femininity. True femininity is an authentic expression of a woman who understands her daughterhood in the eyes of the Father, who understands her call to be sisters to the world, and who recognizes the unique maternal strength that every woman possesses to care in a way that only a woman can. And when we gather in a space like this, sometimes people tell the stories of how they met their spouses. I met my husband on Facebook, so I'm old and it's not that cool. Or they tell the story of how their child was born. The doctor dropped the placenta on the floor when my first child was born, so that was exciting. And then my second kid was born in the middle of a global pandemic in between two major hurricanes that hit my hometown. So she was born at Cabrini down the road because I was evacuating at 9 months pregnant and had to get a brand new doctor at 38 weeks who was wonderful and let me pull her out myself. So it was the most empowering experience of my life. Or they get up here and they tell you the story of when they came to understand who they really were as a woman. And those are all great talks. I've given them, I've heard them. But as I went to bed last night, way too late, but I didn't have my kids demanding things of me, so we all stayed out and hung out. It was nice, and then I had to change a diaper before bed, and I still turned Bluey on in the hotel just to give me some background noise that was comforting. And that's okay. I mean, I love Bluey. I went and saw Bluey live a couple weeks ago and cried the whole time because it was beautiful. No, I was sitting in my hotel room last night, and I'm trying to fall asleep, and the word that this talk is titled after is enough. A word that we can say in a lot of different ways. Like, enough! You say it to your kid who's driving you up a wall. Am I enough? You say it to yourself as you stare in the mirror at the frizzy, poofy hair that you know you're gonna have to pull back, even though you wanted to wear it down today. Am I good enough for him who doesn't even know I exist? Am I smart enough to be her friend? Am I popular enough to go to that event? Do my clothes look cute enough? Am I thin enough? Am I funny enough? Is my makeup expensive enough? We use this word enough because there's this fear that there's a lack. And somehow in our very existence as human beings, we have to make up this gap that we've created for ourselves, for this standard that has been set by who knows? Guys, the internet, our fellow sisters in Christ who sometimes cut us down at the knees thinking it makes them taller, but it just makes us all really short. What does it mean to be enough? And are we ever enough in our own eyes? Are we ever enough in the eyes of the Creator? I have two little girls, Rose and Claire. Rose is almost 6. Claire is almost 3. And my almost 6-year-old is a carbon copy of me. When she was born, she looked just like my husband. I was merely the incubator for mini Tommy McGrady. She came out with his button nose. She had my ears. My ears are kind of small. Don't look at them, but that's why I can't wear Countrymen, because they just fall off on the side. That's the microphone that Britney Spears wears. I'm also not nearly as cool as Taylor Swift and Britney Spears, so I embraced the handheld, right? Didn't get tickets, still kind of sad about it. We're not going to talk about it. Bishop kept saying, I don't know about you. And I was saying under my breath, I'm feeling 22, like the whole time, the whole homily. But my little girl, Rose, now looks like me. She's got kind of red, frizzy hair, big ringlet curls. On day 3 of her pre-K year, the teacher emailed me. And anytime you get a teacher email, you get really worried that your kid's in trouble. But it's day 3, right? So she couldn't have done anything that bad. The teacher emailed me and she said, Miss McGrady, I just was wondering if you could pull Rose's hair back when she comes to school. She just had this shock of crazy curly hair and it was getting in her face all day long. So Rose was constantly moving the hair out of her face. So we had to start doing these, we call them high ponies for Jesus. And we pull the hair back and the higher it is, the closer you are to heaven. So she's got this shock of curly hair and this flat back hair on the front. And then of course, inevitably throughout the course of the day, her hair gets curlier and curlier and poofier and poofier. There's a reason I wear headbands, and it's to protect all of you, because there's a halo around my head by the end of the day. And so she comes home from school the first 3 weeks of pre-K. She's 4, about to turn 5. And she is just a ball of energy and excitement. She loves school. She loves it. She loves her teacher. She loves her friends. She likes sitting in a desk because she's nerdy like her mom. She was excited about her chair back. We put a unicorn patch on the back of it. All the things that you would expect a little girl to like. And then she came home one day. It was a Wednesday. She was a little more forlorn than normal. I hadn't been able to pick her up that day. I do a radio show, and my show gets off the air at 3 p.m., and so she usually goes to after-school care. My husband will pick her up on his way home from school. He's a biology teacher. And sometimes I'll run and go, and that day we'd had to change the plan, so she had to go to after-school care. I wasn't able to pick her up, and so I thought maybe she was kind of sad because of that. I thought maybe she was kind of sad because I'd forgot to put marshmallows in her lunchbox that day, and I'm pretty sure that's the first thing she eats when she opens up her little bent-go box every day. I didn't know if maybe she was upset because they had homework. Learning how to write your name is hard, even if it's just 4 letters. She seemed like something was off, and I'm her mom. You know when your kid is off. So I asked her if she wanted to watch Pretty Cinderella. That's the live-action Cinderella, the only live-action movie that Disney ever should have made, although Little Mermaid was pretty good. I asked her if she wants to watch Pretty Cinderella. She says no. She always wants to watch Pretty Cinderella. Something is wrong. I asked her if she wants to go get Sonic. She says no. You're turning down Sonic? Who turns down Sonic? What is possessing you? I asked her if she wants to go on a walk. She says no. Nothing is getting her out of this funk. And she said, I just want some alone time, Mom. It's a pretty aware child, right? So she goes to her room. I'm in the kitchen getting dinner ready. About 20 minutes passes. Anytime 20 minutes without your child has occurred, you start to get worried. Where is she? What is she doing? So I wander to the back of the house, and I see the bathroom light is on, and I can hear the water running. And I go into the bathroom, and she's standing at her sink, and she's looking in the mirror, and the water's running, and she's holding in her hand a brush. And next to the sink is the detangling spray that I use after we wash her hair every couple of days to get all the knots out. See, when you have hair like us, textured hair, you don't brush it because then you look like a lion. So the only time we brush our hair is after we get out of the shower, after we wash our hair, right? That's proper hair care for hair like this. And she's standing there and the sink is on. She's got the detangling spray. She's taken her ponytail out and she's brushing furiously. And she's crying. And my 5-year-old daughter is standing looking at herself in the mirror, trying to change her hair. Thank God she didn't know where the scissors were, because I'm pretty sure she would have hacked it off. And I walk into the bathroom, and I go and I stand next to her, and I travel the world talking about Jesus. I've talked to thousands of women about authentic femininity. I literally get paid to be on the radio 10 hours a week. And I had no words for this moment. As I looked at my child, my flesh and blood, who looks exactly like I did at that age. And I said, buddy, what's wrong? She looked at me and she said, Nola told me my hair was ugly. And I wanted to go punt Nola across a playground in that moment. I said, well, buddy, why do you think she said that? You know it's not true. And she looked at me and she said, is it not true? She didn't believe me. I said, well, buddy, everybody's hair looks different. And Nola has thin, blonde hair that is in like this perfect bun, like she goes to dance class as soon as school ends. And gosh darn it, I've tried and I can't make my child's hair look like that. And she said, well, my hair fell down on the playground today, and it just like all comes out. She'd been playing on the playground. She'd been going across the monkey bars. And as she was going across the monkey bars, her ponytail got stuck. And so the teacher had to come rescue her from the monkey bars and pull her hair out. And all the kids started making fun of Rosie Posey, whose hair got stuck. And the teacher had to redo her ponytail, and it had crushed her. And the whole day, she'd been thinking about the fact that her hair was wrong. Her frizzy, curly hair that people will stop us in stores and say, look how beautiful those curls are. She was trying to brush out. I didn't know what to do. I could stand there and affirm her as much as possible. I could stand there and show her photos from my childhood. I could stand there and ask her what she wanted to do hairstyle-wise. None of it would have fixed what was hurting inside of her, which was this external force, probably harmless in the sense that kids are kids and sometimes they just say mean stuff, but that wounded her so deeply, and she no longer felt like she was enough. The next morning, as we're getting ready for school, I asked her how she wanted to do her hair. And she looked at me and she said, "Can I take a bath and wash it so you can brush it straight?" And I tried to explain to her, our hair doesn't do that, baby. It'll take 2 hours to straighten it with a flat iron, and it's not going to stick because we live in a swamp. And you walk through a washcloth on the way out the door. I tried to explain to her that it didn't matter what they thought. I tried to explain to her that I love her just how she is, and so does her daddy, and so does God, and so does every other person that meets her that's worth knowing in her life. And at 5 years old, in pre-K, she lost something that all of us have lost at some point. And it's this understanding. It's taken from us. It's taken from us by people. It's taken from us by family. It's taken from us by perfect strangers. It's taken from us as we mindlessly scroll the internet. It's taken from us this awareness of our goodness, this belief that we are good. And the external forces in our lives, which we cannot avoid. We don't live on an island. We're not isolated in a bubble. We don't live by ourselves. Nobody's asking you to go be Amish. We exist in a world where all of this outside noise is going to come at us. Sometimes in the form of a 4-year-old classmate. Sometimes in the form of a best friend who says something snarky. Sometimes in the form of a parent who doesn't have the right words. Sometimes in the form of the church that maybe says something that you don't fully understand. These outside voices that come at us, and we absorb the information, these sponges that we are, and we take it in, and we inherently make it part of the very fabric of our being. And slowly it starts to erode our sense of self. And as our sense of self, as our awareness of our goodness is lost, we recognize, oh my gosh, there's this gap. I have to fill it. I have to fix it. And so we look for all this stuff. We scroll through Instagram. We tap through TikTok. We get together in clumps of girls and we go to the potty and we talk about so-and-so and such and such. You know, Chris is making fun of how we go to the bathrooms all together. I wanted to look at him and say, so we can talk about y'all. You know that, right? Like, it is the greatest source of information, standing in line at the potty. And there will come a point in your life when you have children and you talk about the bathroom so much that you can't stop saying potty to describe it. I literally looked at 5 grown men and said, I'm going to the potty, I'll be right back. And off I went. None of them came with me, thank God. We are constantly bombarded by noise. We are constantly told, look this way. Do that thing. Go to this place. This is the ideal. And we try to fit ourselves in. We do things that we come to regret. We own things that eventually just collect dust. We post things thinking, well, that's what I have to do to fit in with everybody else's conversation. We dress a certain way. We talk a certain way. We act a certain way. Believing that that somehow is going to get us up to the standard that we've set for ourselves, that the world has created, forgetting that at the very beginning of our existence, we were seen and known and loved simply because we are. Delighted in by God the Father, not because of anything we've done, not because of anything we've worn, not because of any earnings that we've collected, but because we exist. You might hear a lot this weekend, and you're going to, and a lot of it's going to be really, really good. And if you forget all of it, I wouldn't be too surprised, because it's a lot coming at you. But I hope you remember the central message that all of us are going to hammer home is that you are beloved. You are delighted in. God sees you, and he goes, wow, look at my girl. He sees you, and he is captivated. Whether your hair's down or in a ponytail. Whether you're in a dress or short shorts. Whether you put that veil on for Mass or you don't even want to be at Mass. He looks at you and he delights in your existence. And all weekend long, we're diving into this idea that I am called to take refuge in the Father's arms. To find safety in the arms of the one who loves me. But you're not going to go find safety in the arms of the Father if you don't know that those arms are ready to hold you close. If you don't realize that those arms will carry you, will cling to you, will hold you, no matter what you've done, no matter how inadequate you felt, no matter what outside voices you've absorbed and have become true to you, that God the Father stands and desires to hold you. That's what it means to be a daughter. And it is from our daughterhood that we are then able to exhibit and proclaim the feminine genius that, quite frankly, I think will save the world. You know, there's that line from that silly movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and every women's session I've ever given, I referenced this line. And one lady came up to me a couple years ago, and she was like, that's misogynistic. And I was like, no, it's not. You know, the man's the head, but the woman's the neck, right? And it's not to say that, oh, well, the man's headship, we must walk behind the man with our heads down and constantly listen, as if we're these passive little creatures who are being dragged around. To understand who we are as women is to recognize our great influence and power in a world, not only influencing one another, but influencing every single person we come in contact with, stranger, friend, foe. That we have a profound ability. John Paul II says this when he talks about the Blessed Virgin Mary. He says that Mary exhibits the loftiest sentiments of the human heart. Women exhibit the loftiest sentiments. The human heart is capable of great things, and you and I as women exhibit that to the world. An awareness and an understanding of what a person is thinking and feeling, a desire to work hard and serve, a receptivity of God's good gifts, that the loftiest sentiments of the human heart are desperately needed in a very dark and lonely world. And if all you ever think to yourself is, oh, I don't measure up, I'm not blank enough, I've done all of these things that have completely and totally removed me from the presence of God, that is a lie straight from the pit of hell. You are never too far away from the loving arms of a Father who literally stretched his arms out upon a cross so he could hold you close. You are never too far gone from the mercy of a God who sees you and wants you. Isn't that what we all want? To be wanted by the people around us? To be loved by the people we encounter? That's why my daughter was having a crisis at the sink. Because a little girl looked at her and said, I don't want you around me with that kind of hair. And so she thought she had to change the hair to be around those people who weren't worth being around in the first place. Forgetting that no matter what that hair looked like, no matter what that confusion might be in your life, no matter what she's done, that God will never walk away and say, she's not for me anymore. The world will do that to you. You'll put yourself in a box, you'll dress the right way, you'll pretend to play this part, and the world will still look at you and say, not enough. Not funny enough, not thin enough, not smart enough, not talented enough, not enough. And so you'll just continue to try to fit into the box. And meanwhile, God's standing over here saying, hello, I'm right here. I want you as you are. I want to make you more completely yourself. We run ourselves in circles thinking I can fit here, I can go there, I can be this, I can do that. I did it. I still do it. I put on 6 different dresses this morning to figure out which one might look the best. And finally called my husband and said, I just need you to pick. He said, wear the green one. It flows the best. Trying to make myself look right for you. Because that's what we do. Comparing and worrying and thinking it's not going to be good enough. There's this great story in the Gospels. I spent an entire year praying with this story. My spiritual director told me I had to read it every day for a year. I resented him for it, but he was right. The story of Martha and Mary. The story of 2 women who become aware of just how good they are. See, Jesus is coming over for dinner. He's going to visit his friends. And Martha and Mary, the hosts, of course, are excited to welcome the Savior of the world to their home. And so Martha is obviously going to put out a spread, right? Like, Jesus is coming over, you're going to feed him something. And so she does all the stuff that she needs to do. She gets the hummus platter ready. She grabs some olives. She puts some grapes on a platter. She's ready to go. Jesus comes over. He sits down. He's God, takes off his sandals, starts talking. And Martha's running around like your grandma on Thanksgiving, trying to get everything together. Now, we're in Cajun country. We know what it means to host. We know what it means to put out a spread. You've all been there at the holiday dinner when the women are running around taking care of everything and they don't sit down until everybody's eaten. And then by the time they sit down, everybody else is done. And good old Martha, and I love Martha. She's my girl. If we ever have a third child, it will be a Martha. Don't tell my husband. I've already planned the name. Martha is standing in the kitchen, and she catches something out of the glimpse of her eye, and it's her sister. This other woman, she's grown up with her, arguably her best friend. And Mary, lazy Mary, is sitting at the feet of Jesus. And Martha's running around serving people food and filling drinks and cutting grapes. And Mary's sitting there on her butt talking to Jesus. And Martha, oh, God love Martha. This is how it describes her in the Gospels. Martha, burdened with much serving. Burdened with much serving, came to him and said. You hear that word burdened and your shoulders kind of slump, don't they? You start thinking about all those heavy things that you left behind. Those responsibilities sitting on your plate. Those people that you feel like you have to live up to their standards. All those to-dos that are sitting in your notebook. The applications for college, the plans that you desperately need to make, the decisions that you have to make, burdened. And she goes to Jesus burdened and heavy and laden. And she looks at Jesus and it's amazing. I love what she says. It's sassy Martha. Martha looks at Jesus and she goes, Lord, do you not care? Can you imagine sitting in front of the Jesus, the King of the universe, the Messiah, the Lord that we spent time with last night and going, do you not care? Do you not care? Look at all I've done. Look at the ways I've tried to fit in. Look at the things I've brought into my life. Look at the stuff that I've either done for you or done to run away from you. Do you not care that my mom and dad won't stop fighting? Do you not care that I didn't get into my first choice for college? Do you not care that nobody asked me to homecoming? Do you not care that I can't fit into my jeans from last year? Do you not care? Lord, do you not care? Chris said something profound last night. That Jesus Christ cares about all those little things, most especially that gap that exists in our heart where we worry we're not enough. He cares about that space and he longs to fill it. Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? She goes to him with the thing that is plaguing her most in that moment. You don't care, Lord. You don't care. And she truly believes that he doesn't. See, this is perhaps the greatest lie that you and I have to get over. We believe that we're not enough in the world. We sometimes believe that we're not enough for our friends and for our family. We sometimes believe that we're not enough in the church. And we're scared that God doesn't care that we feel that way. We're scared that we're the only one that feels that inadequacy. And we think, he doesn't want to deal with that. He's got bigger problems. He's got famine and war and homelessness and poverty. He's got people dealing with sins of lust. He's got people who have far bigger problems than me feeling like I'm not enough. And if you are good, which you are, and if you are delighted in by the Creator, which you are, and if you are loved for all that you are, which you are, then of course he cares that you feel like you're not enough. And Martha goes to him and she says that, Lord, do you not care? And Jesus looks at her. And Martha, exasperated and exhausted and lonely and feeling inadequate, saying this to Jesus, Jesus looks at her and he says, Martha, Martha. Martha, Martha. He says her name. This is an important point. Anytime Jesus says somebody's name, he's calling them to attention. He changes Simon to Peter. Saul will become Paul. He looks at a man possessed by demons and he names the demon and he calls the demon out. It's a name that he calls to get control, to get the person to look, to get the person to see, to let the person know, I know you. And he says her name twice, Martha, Martha. But he doesn't change the name. He doesn't go, Martha, now you're Sharon. He doesn't say, Martha, now you're Marcia. Martha, Martha, who she is, as she is enough. Even in her exasperation, even in her fear that he doesn't care. Martha, Martha. And then he says to her, you are anxious and worried about many things. He doesn't look at her and say, get over it. He doesn't look at her and say, I could use a refill. He doesn't look at her and say, just sit down and hush up. He calls her by name twice, gets her attention, looks her in the eye, and says, I see your anxiety. I see your worry. I see your fear that you are not enough for me and for anyone else in this room. I see that you've been making yourself busy because you think if you do, then you'll finally have some value. I see this incredible spread that you put out that you think nobody enjoyed because nobody said a word. I see that you worry that if you were to just disappear tomorrow, nobody would even notice. I see that you're sitting in a room of 500 women and you don't know what kind of woman you're supposed to be. I see you and your anxiety and your worry, and Jesus invites her to sit down. He doesn't say, turn that off. He doesn't say, take a pill. He doesn't say, go to therapy. All valid and good things that you should do maybe at some point in your life. He looks at her and he says, you're anxious and worried about many things. Your sister chose the better thing to do right now. She's sitting with me. Why don't you sit down too? If you came to this conference not knowing how you were going to fit in, not knowing if you should wear a hoodie, not knowing if you should dress a certain way, style your hair a certain way, talk a certain way, act a certain way in your small groups. If you came to this conference not knowing if God existed, if you came to this conference ready for that Jesus charge that you get every single year, no matter how you came to this conference, Jesus Christ is looking at you and he's calling you by name. And he's saying, come sit with me. The only thing you have to do this weekend is sit with me and let me love you. Let me talk to you. Let me show you that I know you. And I know where you felt that gap. I know where you felt like your hair was too frizzy. I know where you felt like you've made these massive mistakes with your body. I know how you felt like you've been rejected and have done the rejecting. I get it. I see it, and it's okay. Let's just be together with all of that. Taking refuge in God's heart is allowed, is encouraged, is expected, even when your heart is a mess. Finding refuge in the arms of the Father is precisely what he wants us to do when we feel like we have nowhere else to go and nothing left to give. When you have felt like you do not fit in, the Lord is ready to pull you close. When you have felt like you are not pretty enough, the Lord is there to stand and delight in your beauty. When you have felt like you do not conform to the strictures and the standards and the structures of femininity placed before us by the sacred Instagram, the Lord is standing before you and saying, wow, look at you. I love you. What's amazing about this moment is when Martha sits down with Jesus, we don't know what happens next. We don't know what conversation they have. We don't know who does the dishes later. We don't know what happens, but we do know that a few passages later, when Martha's brother Lazarus has died, and Jesus shows up, and he's been dead for 4 days, in a tomb, rotting, and Jesus gets there, Mary, her sister, is hiding, sad and crying and heartbroken because Jesus wasn't there, and Martha, sassy, brash, do you not care about me, Lord, Martha, marches up to Jesus, and she looks at him and says, Lord, if you had been here, this would not have happened, but I know that you can fix this. Because a woman, even in her feelings of inadequacy, who sits at the feet of Jesus, comes to see his goodness. A woman who feels like she is not enough, who allows herself to be loved by the creator of the universe, who literally made the light and the stars for you, who sits with him, comes to realize that he can do anything, including making us feel not so bad about the frizzy hair, or about the mistakes that we've made, or about the friendships that have fallen apart, including holding us close and saying, I want to lavish nothing but love upon you. After about a week or so of Rose really struggling with her frizzy hair, I took her to my hairdresser. I go to a barber shop. When you have textured hair like this, you have to find someone who knows how to handle textured hair. And I brought her to the barber shop, and I sat her down with my friend. And I had my friend talk to her about what it means to have curly, textured hair. And we washed her hair really well, and we brushed it all out, and we sat there for an hour and a half as we watched it dry and kink back up into its curls. And the whole time, as we're sitting in the chair and we're talking with my friend, and we're watching her hair dry, and she's watching herself in the mirror, we played worship music. Steubenville puts out a playlist every year, so I used the playlist from a couple summers ago. And as the songs are playing, and I'm watching my daughter watch herself in the mirror, and we're chatting, and we're visiting, and we're laughing, and I'm just trying to pour into her nothing but words of affirmation, I watched something change in her little heart. Her shoulders relaxed. Her face didn't look so tight. A smile returned. As she stared at herself and she realized this frizzy, textured, kinky hair with these big curls is good. My mama thinks it's good. This hairdresser at this barber shop thinks it's good. And maybe God thinks it's good too. And that's enough. We had to renounce a lie that she had taken into herself so that she could start to see the truth. And I know sometimes these women's sessions are just like fun, happy, clappy. Let's talk about being girls, but that's not how I roll. Because I remember sitting in women's sessions and thinking, this is all great, but that's not for me. I'm not the right kind of girl. Or sitting there listening to these love stories and thinking, nobody's ever going to love me. I play the violin and do student council, and my glasses constantly slip down the bridge of my nose, and I'm doing this all the time like Steve Urkel. That was a very dated reference for the millennial moms in the room. And there's this beautiful thing that over time, as we've come to realize with these conferences, what we think young people need, what we think young women need, is to hear an essential truth. That who you are, however you are, whatever you're dealing with, whatever burden you carried into this riverfront center, the Lord is excited to have you here. And so are we. And he just wants you to sit with him. He wants to see you. He wants to call you by name. And he wants to tell you that you're enough. He wants to tell you that you're beautiful. He wants to tell you that you're good. He wants to look at you, and he wants you to hear him say, wow.